This is not just another chapter in the Dutton story. This is the moment everything explodes. The land is older, the wounds are deeper, and the secrets are finally ready to surface. We thought we understood the Dutton legacy. We thought we knew how it all ends. But 1969 is about to flip everything upside down, because this time it's not just about protecting the ranch. It's about becoming the man who will one day rule it. And trust me, the first look alone proves this might be the wildest story in the entire saga. If you've been following this universe since 1883 and 1923, then you already know one thing. Every generation of Duttons pays a price. Blood, love, loyalty, loss. Nothing comes easy. And 1969 feels different. It doesn't feel like a beginning. It feels like a breaking point. We are stepping into a time when the world is changing fast. America is changing. Montana is changing. And the Duttons, they're trying to hold on to something that might already be slipping through their fingers. What makes this chapter so intense is that we are now closer than ever to the era of John Dutton III, not the powerful rancher we know from the main series, not the hardened governor figure played by Kevin Costner, but the young boy who is still learning what it means to carry the Dutton name. And that right there, that changes everything. Because now we're not just watching history unfold. We're watching a legend being shaped. We're watching the pressure build on a child who doesn't even realize the weight waiting on his shoulders. And when you think about everything that came before, the sacrifices of Spencer Dutton, the tragic love story of Alexandra Dutton, the emotional strength of Elizabeth Strafford, and the quiet determination of Jack Dutton, you start to realize something. 1969 isn't just continuing the story, it's answering questions that have been hanging in the air for years. Who truly shaped John? Who taught him that the ranch is more important than comfort, more important than happiness, maybe even more important than family itself? We know from earlier stories that Spencer survived wars, oceans, and heartbreak. We know he carried Alexandra's memory with him until his last breath. But surviving is not the same as healing. And by 1969, we might see a version of Spencer that is older, quieter, and maybe even haunted. A man who has seen too much and lost too much. And if he's still alive during this time, imagine the impact he would have on a young John, not just as a grandfather figure, but as a living reminder of what the Duttons endured to claim that land. That kind of influence doesn't disappear. It becomes tradition, it becomes law, it becomes obsession. At the same time, the world outside the ranch is no longer the same wild frontier we saw in earlier decades. This is the late 60s. Industries are expanding, politics are shifting, land ownership is becoming complicated, and the Dutton Ranch is no longer just a symbol of legacy, it's a target. That pressure from the outside world is something young John would grow up watching every single day. Deals being made, threats being whispered, enemies smiling to your face. And if 1944 serves as a bridge between the old world and this new one, then 1944 might show us the cracks starting to form. But 1969, that's where those cracks turn into fractures. What makes this first look so wild is the tone. It feels heavier, more serious. There's this sense that innocence is fading, that childhood doesn't last long on the Dutton Ranch. And if John is around 10 years old during this time, then we're about to witness the exact moments that shape his moral code. The way he speaks, the way he protects, the way he refuses to back down. You don't just wake up one day and become the man we met in the flagship series. You're molded, slowly, painfully, and often through loss. There's also the question of leadership. If Spencer steps into the role once held by Jacob Dutton, originally portrayed by Harrison Ford, then we might see a shift in how authority works within the family. Jacob was firm but strategic. Spencer was emotional but fierce. If those traits mix and pass down, it explains so much about John's personality later in life. He's not just stubborn, he's trained to be unbreakable. And let's not forget the creative mind behind this entire universe, Taylor Sheridan. He has a pattern. He doesn't waste dialogue. He plants seeds years in advance. When a character says something that sounds simple, it usually becomes prophecy. That's why 1969 feels like it's going to connect dots we didn't even realize were connected. every conversation will matter, every decision will echo forward. And that's what makes this so thrilling. We already know where the story eventually leads. We know the ranch will still stand decades later, but we don't know what it cost in this era. We don't know what young John had to witness. Did he see betrayal within the family? Did he watch someone die for the land? Did he learn that love is secondary to loyalty? These are the moments that can turn a boy into a protector or into something colder. And the wildest part, this chapter sits right between memory and myth, close enough to feel real, far enough to still hold secrets. That tension is powerful because every time we think we've figured out the Dutton bloodline, something shifts, another possibility appears, another theory starts making sense, and suddenly the family tree isn't just history, it's a puzzle that 1969 is finally ready to solve. Now here's where things get even more intense. 1969 isn't just about watching a young John Dutton III grow up, it's about watching the Dutton Empire stand at a crossroads. By this point in the timeline, the ranch has already survived droughts, economic crashes, wars, and family tragedy. But the late 60s bring a different kind of threat. It's not just guns and cattle anymore. It's paperwork. It's politics. It's corporations with suits instead of saddles. And that shift changes the battlefield completely. The earlier generations fought with instinct and survival skills, but now the fight is strategic, calculated, quiet. And that's terrifying in a different way, because when enemies don't show their weapons, you don't know when the strike is coming. We've seen how the Duttons react when pushed. From 1883 to 1923, every time someone tried to take what's theirs, the response was ruthless. But in 1969, the enemy might not be someone you can simply chase off the land. It might be someone sitting across a table, offering a deal that sounds reasonable until it isn't. And imagine a young John watching all of this unfold, watching adults argue over property lines, watching tension rise at the dinner table, watching loyalty tested in real time. That kind of childhood doesn't create softness. It creates awareness. It creates caution. It creates someone who learns early that trust is earned slowly and broken quickly. And then there's Spencer. If he's still alive in this era, older and weathered, then he becomes more than just a family elder. He becomes a living legend inside that house, a man whose stories aren't just stories, they're warnings. Spencer Dutton survived Africa, war, and heartbreak. He buried the love of his life, Alexandra Dutton, and carried that grief for decades. A man like that doesn't speak lightly, so when he gives advice, it means something. And if young John grows up listening to those lessons, it explains the cold confidence we later see in him, the ability to stand still in chaos, the refusal to panic. That doesn't come from nowhere. It's taught. And maybe 1969 shows us those exact conversations. Quiet talks on a porch, hard truths delivered without emotion, the kind of guidance that shapes a leader before he even knows he's becoming one. But here's the twist. What if 1969 also shows cracks inside the family? What if unity isn't as solid as it once was? We've always seen the Duttons as strong, together, but strength can hide resentment. It can hide jealousy. It can hide disagreements about how the ranch should evolve in a modern world. Some might want to adapt. Others might want to resist change completely. And when a family disagrees about the future of their land, things get dangerous, because the land isn't just property, it's identity, it's pride, it's legacy. And when identity feels threatened, people don't react calmly, they react emotionally. That emotional tension is what could make 1969 feel explosive. Not constant gunfights, not endless drama, but slow-burning conflict that builds until something finally snaps. And when it does, it won't just impact one generation. It will echo all the way into the timeline of Yellowstone. That's what makes this chapter so important. It's not filler, it's foundation. Let's talk about something even more powerful: legacy versus choice. One thing this universe always explores is whether the Duttons choose the ranch, or if the ranch chooses them. By 1969, that question becomes heavier than ever because young John is at an age where life could still go in many directions. He could dream of leaving, of building something different, of escaping the weight of history. But when you grow up surrounded by stories of sacrifice, escape doesn't feel honorable. It feels like betrayal. And that pressure is subtle but constant. Imagine being told without words that generations bled for this soil, that your ancestors crossed oceans and fought wars to protect it, that men like Jacob Dutton built it into something unshakable, that women like Elizabeth Strafford endured loss and still stood strong. When you grow up hearing that, you don't just inherit land, you inherit responsibility. And responsibility at a young age can either strengthen you or isolate you. That might be the emotional core of 1969, watching John slowly understand that his life might never truly be his own, that every decision he makes will be measured against the Dutton name. And if Spencer is there, older and quieter, he might see that conflict in John's eyes, because Spencer himself once lived freely. He chased adventure, he fell deeply in love, he experienced a world beyond Montana, and yet he came back. Not because he had to, but because something pulled him home. That pull is almost spiritual in this story. The land isn't just dirt. It remembers. It demands loyalty. And 1969 might show us the exact moment John feels that pull for the first time. Maybe it's through loss. Maybe it's through witnessing injustice. Maybe it's through protecting someone weaker. But whatever it is, it transforms him. And that transformation is what makes the first look feel so wild. Because you can sense it building. You can feel that this isn't just a calm family drama. It's a coming-of-age story wrapped inside a war for survival. And coming-of-age stories are powerful because they're personal. We're not just watching history, we're watching identity form. The confidence, the stubbornness, the silent rage, all of it has roots, and 1969 seems ready to dig deep into those roots. Even the atmosphere feels heavier, less romantic than earlier prequels, more grounded, more tense. It's as if the myth of the West is fading, replaced by the reality of modern America, and the Duttons have to decide whether they'll adapt to that reality or fight it at all costs. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. Because 1969 doesn't exist alone, it connects directly to 1944, which itself bridges the emotional intensity of 1923 with the hardened world of Yellowstone. That middle chapter is crucial. It likely shows us the transition from survival mode to strategic dominance, and by the time we reach 1969, we're seeing the results of those choices, the alliances made, the enemies created, the compromises accepted. And if there's one thing we know about this universe, it's that every compromise comes with a cost. What excites me the most is how 1969 might finally answer long-standing questions about the Dutton bloodline. We've debated whether Spencer or Jack becomes a direct ancestor of John. We've tried to piece together timelines and ages. But this chapter might stop the guessing. It might reveal truths that reframe everything we thought we understood. And that's thrilling. Because when a story can surprise you this late into its universe, that means the writing is intentional. It means details matter. And knowing the storytelling style of Taylor Sheridan, nothing will be random. If a character hesitates before speaking, it means something. If someone chooses silence over anger, it means something. That layered storytelling is what makes this saga addictive. So when I say 1969 looks wild, I don't just mean action. I mean emotional intensity, revelations, turning points, moments that will make us rewatch earlier seasons with completely new understanding. And at the center of it all is a young boy who doesn't yet realize he's becoming a symbol, a protector, a future governor, a man willing to sacrifice almost everything for land that feels like family. That's powerful. That's tragic, and that's exactly why this chapter might be the most important one yet. Because before legends become legends, they are shaped by fire. And 1969 looks like pure fire. And here's the part that truly makes this chapter feel absolutely wild. 1969 isn't just building towards something, it's building into something we've already seen. We know the future. We've watched the battles in Yellowstone. We've seen the political wars, the land disputes, the betrayals, the impossible choices. We've seen the version of John Dutton III who refuses to bend, who would rather lose everything than give up an inch of soil. But what we've never truly seen is the emotional blueprint, the exact moments that carved that mindset into him. And 1969 feels like the missing piece of that puzzle. Because at some point, a boy stops asking questions and starts making decisions. At some point, innocence fades and responsibility takes over. And if this story does what I think it's about to do, we're going to witness that shift in real time. Not dramatically, not loudly, but gradually, quietly, in the way he listens more than he speaks, in the way he observes how adults handle threats, in the way he reacts the first time he understands that someone wants to take the ranch. That realization alone can change a child forever, and what makes it even heavier is the generational shadow hanging over him. If Spencer Dutton is still alive during this time, then John isn't just growing up with stories of survival, he's growing up next to the man who lived them, a man who lost Alexandra Dutton and never truly moved on, a man who understood love deeply but chose duty every single time. That kind of presence doesn't just influence you, it shapes your values. It teaches you that loyalty outweighs comfort, that sacrifice is expected, not praised. And when a child absorbs that philosophy, it becomes second nature. That's how legacies harden, not through one dramatic event, but through years of watching and learning. And here's something even more interesting. 1969 sits at the edge of cultural change. The world outside the ranch is becoming louder, faster, more modern. Traditions are being questioned everywhere. Authority is being challenged everywhere. But inside the Dutton household, tradition might feel like the only thing keeping them stable. That contrast creates tension because eventually the outside world doesn't stay outside. It knocks, it demands, it pressures. And the Dutton response has always been the same: hold the line. So imagine young John witnessing that clash between old values and new realities. Imagine him understanding at such a young age that protecting the ranch might mean standing against the direction the world is moving in. That's not just responsibility, that's isolation. And isolation creates strength, but it also creates distance. Which explains so much about the older John we later meet: the guarded personality, the emotional walls, the refusal to fully trust even those closest to him. Those traits don't appear overnight, they're built layer by layer, and 1969 might show us those layers forming. But the wildest possibility, this chapter could also introduce a defining loss. Because if there's one pattern in this universe, it's that growth often follows tragedy. Every generation loses something important: a parent, a sibling, a partner, and that loss becomes fuel. If 1969 delivers a moment like that, something that shakes the Dutton family to its core, then we'll finally understand the emotional scar that John carries into adulthood. Not just as a rancher, not just as a leader, but as a man. And that's what makes this first look feel so charged. It doesn't feel like nostalgia, it feels like revelation. It feels like we're about to re-experience the entire saga from a new angle. Suddenly, conversations from earlier series will mean more. Decisions will feel heavier. Even quiet moments will carry new weight because we'll know exactly